Hi, welcome back to my channel. This video today is going to be a ranking of the 5 brand new episodes of Black Mirror that have just been released on Netflix. And I've been a fan of this show ever since it came out in 2011, aired on Channel 4. And, I really think the quality and the consistency of the show has been there ever since. Even when it got sold onto Netflix and you had that bigger budget and slight change in tone, I still think since then there is a large amount of the episodes have really worked for me. It's a fascinating concept for a show, kind of dealing with future technology and how it's interwoven with all these social issues, and kind of having that as a backdrop for what really is a drama show. It's a very, very interesting watch. It's great to chat about with your friends whilst watching it, and I love these kind of anthology series as well. So I was really excited about this new release, and I can see already people and critics and reviews are quite negative about it, and I think that's just because you can see here that Charlie Brooker, the writer of the show, he obviously wants to start pushing the show maybe in a little bit of a different direction. He's kind of testing new ground, and it is a little bit different from previous seasons, I would say, but not to say that it's any worse. I still think this is a really great season, and even my lowest rated episode is definitely still one I would recommend that you watch. So anyway, let's get into my ranking of these 5 new episodes. I will try and keep this as spoiler free as possible as well. I won't go obviously into any of the big twist reveals or anything like that, but I do want to get into a little bit of detail about the plot and some of the things that happen within these episodes. So of course, if you want to go in completely blind, do come back to this video after you've gone and seen all the episodes. So my number 5 choice is going to be Demon 79. And this one is about a girl that is living in northern England in the late 70s. And one day she is approached by this entity that tells her that the apocalypse is coming and the world is going to end in 3 days if she does not kill 3 people. I loved the chemistry between the 2 leads. The guy who plays the demon is absolutely hilarious. And I think after such a dark season, because this is the last episode, and when it has all been so dark, maybe even distinctly more so, I think, than some of the previous seasons, this one does kind of bring a little bit of a lighter tone to it. It's funny, and even despite how much brutal violence there is in this one, it does work quite nicely together, I think. You've got that undertone here of the sort of racism and the politicising of nationalism as well. And I think I would have liked them to maybe get them to integrate that a little bit better with those with the themes of the apocalypse and everything. I think there could have been something quite clever they could have done there, bringing them together better, but they do feel a little bit separate from each other. I feel like, especially with the first 2 people that Need are effectively targets, it's kind of unrelated to those themes. So, it just kind of felt like there were 2 separate things going on, whereas I would have liked them to maybe do something a little bit more clever with that, I think, than what actually the way it was executed here. But despite that, it's still entertaining. I did think that the running time was maybe a little bit long. I did start to feel it, an hour and 10 for this episode. I'm not really sure it had the content to kind of justify that running time. So I was definitely starting to feel it by the end of that. But overall, again, as I said, an episode that I would recommend. It's just not one I don't think that I'll be rushing to rewatch anytime soon. So my number 4 choice is going to be Joan is Awful. And this I thought was a really strong opener for the season. It's probably the most Black Mirror feeling episode, I would say, out of any of these 5. So that's probably why people have been a little bit more forgiving of this episode, I think. But this one's about the story of a woman who one day her identity is effectively taken by this online streaming service akin to Netflix. And they have this CGI generated TV show, which is a complete mirror image of her life, like picking it up in real time. And it's starring Salma Hayek as her. So it's quite an interesting setup for an episode. They actually did something similar in a film from a couple of years ago called Cam, in which this Cam girl's identity is taken and they have all this CGI generated videoing of her, and I thought that it was framed as a horror film, and I thought that was a really interesting concept talking about this stuff. So I like the Black Mirror are starting to do episodes like that, and kind of talking about the fear of the deep fakes getting more and more convincing. You get stuff on political campaigns where people have made these fake videos that are all generated by computers, and even though they don't look as convincing yet as this episode is kind of portraying where this could be in the future, and it's quite scary to watch. But I do think when Salma Hayek's character turns up, or herself, sorry, playing herself, when she turns up, it gets ramped up to quite crazy levels. I think they go a little bit over the top with some of her scenes and kind of really milking the fact they have her there. It's like the show's super excited to have Salma Hayek as the lead here, and they really go to town on a lot of the jokes here. And I did laugh through a lot of it. It is funny, but I think maybe some of them were played out a little bit too long. And the last thing, without going into any spoilers here, the final twist of the episode, whilst I did like it, it is clever. I feel like it's maybe a little bit rushed in how it wraps up. Like when it's revealed what's actually going on, it's so rushed, these scenes, and so quick cut. It does take you a few minutes to actually digest the complexity of what's going on here. It did take me until literally after the last few minutes of the episode to actually kind of wrap my head around what was going on in that twist. So it is cool, it is quite a clever idea, but I think they could have found a way to let that scene breathe a little bit more, whereas it's so rushed, it feels like maybe it's covering up a few of the inconsistencies in the logic there, perhaps. I'm not sure, but I'd have to probably watch it again to see how I feel about it on a rewatch. But I think they maybe could have executed that a little bit better. But as I said, overall, this episode, still a really strong one. It's a great opener for the season, and it would definitely be a recommended one, even though it is lower down on my list. So my number 3 choice is going to be Maisie Day. And I know this one has been getting a lot of hate, but I have to say I really enjoyed it. And this one's about a woman who works for the paparazzi, but she's starting to have some sort of moral problems, and she's feeling guilty about some of the things associated she's doing in her job after a particular event happens near the beginning. And she's someone that's struggling with money, so she wants to do this one final job that's going to pay a lot, where she's going to effectively stalk this celebrity who's gone off the rails after this incident. And this one really worked for me. I think I would say probably the bit that's going to really divide people is obviously the ending and how this whole thing concludes. It is off the wall insane. But for anyone who knows me and knows the kind of stuff that I like, it really worked for me. I think if you're not expecting that and you can't be open-minded to where this one goes, I can understand why some people can't get on board with it. But that is the thing that is putting people off. So, if you're looking at that rating and thinking of skipping it, I would say if you're open-minded to seeing where the show's going to go, definitely give this one a watch, because it's still a really well done episode. The lead actress, Zazie Beetz, I hope I'm not, destroying the pronunciation of her name there. But that actress, she's absolutely fantastic. She's really intriguing in the main role. Loved following it along with her. And I was genuinely, because it's such a short episode as well, it's paced really well. And I was genuinely so intrigued to know where this thing was going to go and how crazy it gets in the end. I kind of admire it for how bold it goes. So it's just definitely one it moved up my list the more I was thinking about it, because it's a really well done episode, and I do think the only thing that people are put off by is how crazy the ending gets. So yeah, don't skip over this one, definitely give it a watch, highly recommended, a really solid Black Mirror episode. My number 2 choice is going to be Lock Henry. And this one, again, like Demon 79, it's a little bit different to a normal Black Mirror episode, I would say, but really try to enjoy it on its own terms, because it is another really brilliant episode in this series. The story here is about this couple that are amateur filmmakers, and they go back to the boyfriend's hometown in the Highlands of Scotland and basically get inspired to do this new documentary about this serial killer who lived in this village. And the thing I loved about this one is just how incredible the atmosphere they build is. I was just intrigued and gripped by this episode from beginning to end. It's genuinely quite scary. Some of the reveals and where the plot goes here is genuinely quite disturbing. I was pretty surprised by that, and I just thought it was executed immensely. I think as well, I liked the cast here again is really strong. You know, like I've said this basically about all of these episodes. The actors are just really, really high quality. I think when you've got these kind of dramas where you need really convincing actors, where they're character-driven stories, this one as well, I just got so invested in these characters and loved their kind of journey they were going on through this nightmare. And, you know, a lot of the pub owner's son, a lot of people will recognise him as Podrick from Game of Thrones. He was absolutely hilarious. He brought a really nice bit of comedy at the right moments as well. And like I say, with comedy horror, I spoke about this a few times on my channel, is that comedy horror is a hard sell for me. You know, like I find so often TV and movies, they'll cut the tension at the wrong moments with comedy, which I can't stand. Whereas here, you know, when the scenes are taking themselves seriously, they stay in that tone and they'll never kill the tension for a cheap joke. Whereas they find really nice moments for this actor to kind of bring in these moments of comedy that really work. So I loved that about the episode. I think the whole conclusion is unbelievably twisted, and it just really worked. It's a great episode, very horror focused. So people like me who like that will definitely have a preference for this episode, I think. I think the only thing I would say about it is the ending after the kind of conclusion of the story there feels a little bit tacked on to me, probably to give it that sort of more Black Mirror vibe. And I don't think it was needed, or if it was, maybe put it there in a more subtle way, I think. But, you know, other than that, this is, again, a highly recommended episode. Definitely one I can see myself rewatching. So my number one choice, my favourite episode of the season, is going to be Beyond the Sea. And this one is just classic Black Mirror. It's a great concept, a great story. And this is about two guys who are working together in space on this mission for a number of years. And back home where their families are, it's kind of set in the late 60s, but in a reality where there's futuristic technology. And there are ways for these guys to kind of communicate or have another life back home as well simultaneously. I say I don't want to go too much into the plot from there without spoiling anything, but that's the setup here. And there is a tragedy that happens in one of these guys' families, and it's about the drama that unfolds after that. I think I just got so wrapped up in the drama of this story, and you can totally understand how the complications between these two characters happens, and everything with Kate Mara's character and how she gets wrapped up in this situation. You know, it just makes you feel a whole array of things. It's tense at times, it's emotional, it's quite scary at times, and it's just quite a rich episode. There's a lot going on here. It's an episode I think that's quite difficult to talk about as well without going. I'm really trying hard not to spoil anything here, because it's a story that has so much to it. I really want people to experience that without me telling them. But I just feel like I was so invested in these characters. Again, Aaron Paul is just unbelievably good here. He's a great actor. I love seeing him in everything that he's in, and him effectively having to play two characters here. He's just, you know, fascinating to watch. And I think the only thing is that I'm still like kind of resting on and considering is that ending, because it is very extreme. And I think I'm going to have to rewatch it to decide how I fully feel about that, because I watched it and I liked it, but it's very dark and I just don't know whether it was explained enough why it went that dark, is all I'll say. So again, it's one that I'm very intrigued to rewatch. It's one I can see myself looking forward to revisiting. And I think this is the episode of this whole season that will stay with me the longest. Probably for all of Black Mirror, though, it's not one of my favourite episodes ever. You know, I have some episodes that I think I've just remembered and talked about so much and have so much love for. It doesn't quite get up to that level, but for me, I think for this season on first viewing, this episode for me, I do believe is the strongest of the season. So that's all my thoughts for you on season 6 of Black Mirror and my ranking of the 5 new episodes. Do let me know as well which episodes here you enjoyed, what worked for you and what didn't. As I said, a lot of people seem to be a little bit down on this series at the moment. I'm wondering whether in time, maybe when it's had time to rest for a while, maybe that tonal shift will kind of go down a bit better with people in hindsight. Because genuinely, I went into this open-minded and I really had a good time with the season. I think a lot of the episodes have a lot going for them, to be honest. I'm quite interested to revisit them, and I would love to know what all your thoughts are on these new releases. So thank you very much for watching the video. Please do leave me a like and subscribe to the channel if you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.